You ever notice how you don't quit your life? You just keep restarting it? New plan, new routine. This time I'll do it right. And somehow you end up right back here. Most people think that's a discipline problem. It's not. Previously, we looked at what happens when standards quietly become optional. This is what happens before that, when restarting still feels like you're doing something. This isn't about motivation, and it's definitely not about starting over harder. It's the side of self-improvement nobody warned you about, the psychology behind why restarting feels like progress, and why it actually teaches your system to quit. And strangely enough, solo leveling exposes this pattern more honestly than most modern advice. Stay with me, because once you see this, you'll never reset the same way again. Restarting feels productive. That's the problem. Think about the moment right after you fall off track. You miss a workout, you skip a study session, you break the habit you swore you'd keep. You tell yourself, I'll just restart tomorrow. And weirdly, you feel better. The guilt fades, the pressure lifts. Not because you fixed anything, but because you escaped the discomfort of continuing imperfectly. Restarting feels clean. Continuing feels messy. And the brain loves clean. Psychology has a name for this: novelty-driven dopamine. Your brain releases motivation not for progress, but for beginnings, new plans, new routines, new versions of future you. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the mind prefers illusion over effort because illusion costs nothing. Restarting gives you the feeling of control without the friction of discipline. So, your brain learns something dangerous. When things get uncomfortable, relief is one reset away. Early in solo leveling, Jinwoo stands at the edge of a dungeon entrance. The light inside flickers faintly. The space beyond it feels heavy. He doesn't rush in, but he doesn't leave either. The moment where turning back would make sense, where waiting would feel responsible, where restarting later would feel smarter. No countdown, no pressure, just the quiet option to step away and tell himself this attempt doesn't count. He steps forward anyway, not because he's ready, but because waiting won't make him any readier. It's like deleting your to-do list at 11:47 p.m. Not because the tasks are done, but because seeing them unfinished makes you anxious. So you clear the list, sleep better, and wake up to the same life. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Every time you restart, you teach your brain that quitting is part of the routine. The reset isn't neutral, it's training. System check. When something breaks, do you continue from the mess? Or do you wait for a cleaner beginning? Restarting doesn't feel like failure, it feels like relief. That's why it's dangerous. Every time you reset, something subtle happens. You tell yourself, next time will be different. But notice what actually changes? Not your behavior, not your environment, just the timeline. You push the discomfort forward, and the brain quietly files that away. According to behavioral psychology, your brain doesn't reward outcomes. It rewards relief. Relief after reset leads to reset reinforced. That's operant conditioning in its simplest form. Over time, your nervous system learns a rule. When things get messy, restart. Not because you're weak, but because the system is efficient. In solo leveling, the system doesn't reward intention. Jinwoo doesn't gain anything for planning better, or waiting for confidence, or imagining a stronger version of himself. The system responds only after movement, especially movement made while uncomfortable. No reset bonus, no credit for almost entering, only continuation counts. It's like setting 5 alarms, not to wake up earlier, but to negotiate with yourself longer. Each snooze feels harmless until mornings stop feeling possible at all. Restarting isn't neutral, it's a lesson. Discomfort becomes something to escape, not something to move through. System check. When discomfort shows up, does relief come from doing the next small step or from wiping the slate clean? At some point, restarting stops feeling temporary. It starts feeling justified. After enough resets, the language changes. I've always been like this. I'm just inconsistent. The reset turns into a story about who you are. So, you protect the pattern. You normalize it. Not because you're lazy, but because identity is safer than uncertainty. Psychology calls this identity preservation. Once a behavior repeats enough times, the brain stops treating it as a choice and starts treating it as you. Marcus Aurelius warned that people cling to habits not because they're good, but because they're familiar. In Solo Leveling, there's a long stretch where Jinwoo doesn't challenge his place. He doesn't fight the label, he survives inside it. Dangerous, yes, but known. Changing would mean expectations. Responsibility. Staying small lets him say, this is just how it is. It's like hating your job, but secretly enjoying how predictable your complaints have become. Same vents, same version of you every Monday. Leaving would mean finding out who you are without the excuse. You don't restart because you fell off. You restart because continuing would force you to outgrow a version of yourself that's comfortable. System check. When you fall off track, do you treat it as something you did or as something you are? Restarting isn't the hardest part. Repairing is. This is the moment most people never practice. You fall off, you miss the day, and instead of restarting, you repair. You show up late, you do it imperfectly. No relief, no motivational rush. Repairing feels unfinished. There's no victory screen for showing up late, so most people erase the attempt. Repair offers no novelty. The brain prefers beginnings because beginnings feel complete. Repair forces you to face what's already damaged instead of pretending it never happened. In Solo Leveling, Jinwoo sometimes keeps moving forward injured, uneven, uncelebrated. No glow up, no dramatic shift, just progress that looks incomplete. That's repair. It's like sending a follow-up text after an argument. Not the perfect apology, not the dramatic paragraph, just, hey, I shouldn't have disappeared. No relief, no closure, just honesty that feels exposed. Progress isn't built by restarting well, it's built by repairing poorly. System check. After a miss, do you repair what's broken or erase the attempt and start over? Eventually, restarting stops feeling good. At first, resets feel powerful, but over time, that feeling fades. No relief, no momentum, just the same pattern with a different start date. Same bug, new save file. This is extinction. In Solo Leveling, Jinwoo stops pausing at thresholds. Not because he's fearless, but because the option to reset no longer tempts him. There's no speech, no decision. He just moves. The reset impulse is gone. Not resisted, just irrelevant. It's like refreshing the same feed, knowing nothing new is there, but checking anyway. Not because you expect something different, but because stopping would force you to notice the silence. You don't stop restarting because you're strong. You stop because it no longer works. Final system check. When you think about starting over now, does it feel relieving or empty? Across every section, the system wasn't asking different questions. It was asking the same one in different forms. When discomfort shows up, what do you reach for? Some patterns reset, some hesitate, some repair. Not as identities, as modes. B rank, continue mode. When things break, you usually keep going. Progress stays imperfect, but it stays alive. C rank, interruption mode. You don't quit, you pause until things feel clearer. D rank, reset mode. Restarting is your reflex when discomfort appears. Progress resets with friction. E rank, loop mode. Beginning feels safer than continuation. The reset has become familiar. This isn't who you are. It's what the system sees most often. What matters isn't fixing the whole pattern. It's noticing the exact moment it usually resets. That moment after the miss. Most people rush to erase that moment because mess doesn't look like progress, even when it is. But the pattern only changes when you stay. Just one small task taken from the mess. Not to get back on track, just to continue. Once is enough to interrupt the loop. You thought this was about restarting your life. It wasn't. It was about what you do when restarting stops working. You don't pass this test by trying harder. You pass it when the system stops needing to ask.